is a leader in the Jewish community, and he is saying, how can I be born again? That doesn't make any sense. You see, Nicodemus is operating from a level of concrete. There are certain rules. This is how you access God. These things, do this and you're in. And Jesus says, it's not quite like that. In fact, it's very different. There is this metaphor, this thing that kind of weaves in and out, and it doesn't look the same for everybody, and you, Nicodemus, need to be okay with that. I think sometimes we are operating out of concrete when we need to operate a little bit more in a fluid state. I'm not talking about questioning the truth of Jesus Christ and the things that are central, the things that are core to having a relationship with Christ. But my relationship with Jesus, guaranteed 100%, does not look exactly like yours. It is different because we are different people. And so Jesus is using an image for Nicodemus to understand this is what it means to really get in deep with God. You guys out here, you Pharisees, have all of these rules. And some of those are valuable because Jesus says, I've not come to completely abolish the law or turn away from the law. The law has some good things about it. The things that you and I do, the morality that fits within each of our lives as we kind of relate to God and want to live lives that are exemplary of Jesus. Those things matter. Those things would have been a part of the law in ancient Jewish custom as well. But Jesus says, it's not just about the law. My relationship with Jesus looks different than yours, and yours looks different than the person sitting next to you. There are things that are similar and in common, but we each have an individual relationship with Christ. And so Jesus is using this idea of water. He says, there is a physical change that happens when you are born. You go from the mother's womb. Now, this is kind of an interesting connection to the Old Testament, that we are all born after the flood, right? A mother's water breaks, and then the child comes. So we are born after the flood. There is an interesting connection that happens. There is a physical change that takes place in our bodies as tiny infants as we go from a place that is contained and very safe into a world that is broken. So Jesus says, he acknowledges there is a physical thing about being born that takes place, but there is a spiritual thing that takes place as well, because Jesus says you have to be born of spirit as well. There is a supernatural thing that happens inside of us when we recognize the need for Christ to pour into our lives, to do something different with the things that categorize what makes us who we are. It could involve changing habits and relationships. Those are physical things, but there is a supernatural thing that takes place inside of us when we recognize the need that we have for the person of Jesus Christ to invade our souls. Then Jesus changes the metaphor. He said, well, it's kind of like wind. First it's like water, but now it's like wind. He said the wind blows wherever it wants to, and this is a connection to the Holy Spirit. If you were to do a word study, you would find that the word for wind has to do with breath. It has to do with courage. If you've ever heard the phrase, they had the wind knocked out of them, basically it says you lost your courage. Also, that word wind relates directly to the Holy Spirit. Jesus says, it's kind of like wind. It blows around and nobody exactly knows what, if we could even dispel with the metaphor, nobody knows exactly what God is doing, but God is doing something. And it matters, it has impact on us. We cannot see the wind, we see the effects of the wind, right? We see the effect of what God is doing in this world. And when we attach our lives to Christ in right relationship, we have the opportunity not necessarily to see the wind blow, but to be involved in its movement. That is really what being saved is about. That we have the opportunity to join God in the reclamation and the restoration of His creation. That is what being saved is about. Being saved is not just about coming on Sunday mornings. It's not just about having this relationship with a God that I can't really see, touch, feel, smell. This being that is out there that I'm confident that has created me and wants me to do something. It's not just that. It is that we get to be involved in God's creation and His redemption. So, let me ask you this. Why, this is on your page, I'm going to give you a couple, like 30 seconds to answer this question. Why do you come to church? Why are you involved in church? Maybe we should have asked this at the very beginning, because now your mind is thinking in some terms maybe that I have kind of prompted you with. But why do you come to church? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do this. So there you go, 30 seconds. Why do you come to church? Okay, maybe possible answers that you wrote down, not necessarily going to ask you to share. It's going to be something that will prompt discussion on the way home or at dinner this afternoon. Possible answers might relate to location. You like where Edgewood is located, that it contains family and friends that you are comfortable and very familiar with. Maybe it is the particular size of Edgewood that you like, or the style with which we worship and the style of preaching happens. Another question that I want you to think about, and this is something that I have been thinking about as well. These aren't things that I have, that I'm just randomly pulling out. These are things that I have taken in for myself and begun to ask these kind of questions. Are we choosing church for us? Have we chosen to be a part of a given church, this church specifically, because of our ideas and what we want to see happen in a given church? I want to give you a new word maybe to you. This is the word ecclesia. And this word translated out of the Greek means being called out. We are called out. Our ecclesiology is why we are here. So what is our ecclesiology? Why is it that we are here? Why have we been called out, and what are we being called out to do? Now, it is very tempting to think that, well, that might mean that I am being called out of the culture. That God is asking me to be separated from the sin that surrounds us in our broken world. I would say without hesitation that that is at least a portion of the definition that we have adopted. That God is calling us out of the sin that is surrounding us as Christians. That He's calling us out of that. That He is calling us out ultimately of this life. That God will rescue us when this life is over. We go to heaven. We sang about that this morning. And I think we need to sing songs about heaven, because quite honestly, I cannot wait. I absolutely cannot wait, because this morning, for example, I cannot wait to go to heaven where there are no problems with coffee makers and getting them going in the job room. I will be glad when I go to heaven and I come into the sanctuary of God and flip on the lights and one of the rows does not come on. That happened in this room this morning. And thinking, what else could possibly, you don't want to ask that question, right? What else could go wrong? I will be glad when the struggles, and these are small things, right? We can talk all day about the difficulty that this life entails. The sickness and the dishealth. I mean, Darren Bartlett, a good friend of mine, 36 years old, is dealing with heart issues. And they were afraid to send him home for fear that he may, in fact, die. How is that right? I don't think this is how it's supposed to be. So, for the record, I cannot wait for heaven to come. I cannot wait to cross over and spend eternity in a place without sin, without sorrow, without all of the difficulties that this life entails. However, I think that there have been moments in our church's history, not specifically Edgewood, but in the Big C church, the large church, that our history has been all about getting to heaven. And we have forgotten at times that God